One of the most fascinating observations I made in my fieldwork for linguistic anthropology at university was the remarkable practice of code switching among young adults who were raised speaking different languages at home compared with at school. Hello, my name is Christopher, and today I'd like to talk about code switching, also known as language mixing, among people with the gift of simultaneous bilingualism, which refers to the acquisition of two first languages from birth or early childhood. Now, I'm sure you've encountered this practice before, whether you've had the good fortune of participating in it or not. I, for one, have not, unfortunately. Think of a child whose parents speak two different languages to him, or, more likely, whose parents are both immigrants and speak a different language at home from the local language, as was the case with my fieldwork. Such bilingualism can arise from growing up in a multilingual society, such as in parts of Europe, or where a native language is spoken alongside a colonial language, such as in India, but these instances are far less common in the predominantly monolingual United States. Perhaps the most curious feature of a bilingual child's speech is his capacity to code switch, which simply means using more than one language in a conversation naturally. Here are some examples from my linguistics textbook of a child speaking to someone who understands both English and Spanish. Sabes mi school bus no tiene un stop sign, and hoy yo era line leader en mi escuela. So, what exactly is the child doing here? Well, it's obvious. He's combining English and Spanish to convey meaning. Don't be fooled, however, for this does not mean that the child's grasp of each language is inferior, respectively, to his monolingual peers. Nor does it suggest that English and Spanish are now fused into one confused entity within his brain. On the contrary, children are exceptionally good at differentiating between even very similar languages and from a very young age. But in that case, why would the child choose to mix languages? Well, let's examine the code switching again. In the sentence, Sabes mi school bus no tiene un stop sign, the child is not just randomly blending words. Instead, he's selectively, albeit subconsciously, inserting very particular English nouns into a sentence with Spanish syntax and verbs. To borrow linguistics terminology, English becomes the embedded language within the matrix language of Spanish. Take a look at those nouns one more time. School bus, stop sign, line leader. What do they have in common? Well, they are all related to the child's school experience in the United States. It's certainly possible that the child knows these words in Spanish as well. Autobús, señal de stop, guía de línea. But he uses the English translations far more often in daily life when interacting with monolingual English-speaking school children. So, when speaking to someone who understands both languages, the child, unless instructed otherwise, as is sometimes the case, sees no reason to make the effort of selecting only one language. He simply does whatever's easiest for him. Does that make sense? There are other reasons, of course, why a simultaneous bilingual might code switch. Again, someone whose comfort with either language is essentially the same and is not simply speaking Spanglish because he or she didn't bother to learn the vocabulary that week for Spanish class. And these include ease of communication phonetically, such as someone mixing languages to avoid certain words that are difficult to pronounce. Also, to include or exclude people from a conversation, which can be really annoying, to convey thoughts or feelings that are more easily expressed in one language over another. Take the Portuguese word saudade, for example, to demonstrate belonging to a particular social group or identity, to emphasize something, to reference something indigenous to the other language, like a song lyric, for humor, or simply out of habit. My personal fieldwork involved Brazilian immigrants and the first-generation children from Portuguese-speaking households interacting in a shared work environment. I noted that while the immigrants would speak among themselves and with the children only in Portuguese, the children, whose verbal proficiency was basically identical in either language, would constantly be code switching among themselves, using the societal and scholastic language of English embedded within their communal matrix language of Brazilian Portuguese. It was somewhat dizzying to watch because one moment someone would start a story in Portuguese but then suddenly switch over to English to describe something from school, like the Spanish mixing child from before, or some American cultural feature. Alternatively, the other person would reply in English for a couple sentences before the conversation would inevitably and seemingly impulsively revert to Portuguese, often mid-sentence without missing a beat, as if it were completely normal, which to them, of course, it was. But for the outside observer, the effortlessness with which they perform this complex linguistic feat continues to amaze me. Alright, that's all for today. I really hope that made sense and that you learned something as well. I'd like to make more lay linguistics videos, especially about language acquisition, so let me know if you enjoyed this one by leaving a like and comment down below. My sources, as always, are in the description, and with that, thank you so much for watching.